I got the name Mr. 4 to 8 because I originally started, my first big social media business and business in general was around the stock market and trading stocks. And so I was trading from pre-market at 4 a.m. to after hours closing bell, at 8 p.m. And so I called myself Mr. 4 a.m. to 8 p.m. Now it's more like hopefully Mr. 4 a.m. to 8 a.m. and then I'm done.
My name's Max Gagliardi, and this is Always Be Building. If you're watching this video, take a moment, hit the subscribe button on YouTube, or you can follow me on your favorite podcast app. Hope you enjoy the show. Blake, thanks for coming on the podcast, man.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me.
So you're like big time short-term rentals guy. You've got the social media following. You're always posting like the different places that you have, or like the renovations that you're doing. You're posting like a lot of just like flashy stuff. You've got all kinds of cool social media content. And so I'm glad that you're coming on. You're also a guy that's like really encouraging and like behind the scenes. Like when I would post stuff on short-term rentals, you'd be like, "Hey man, this is awesome. Love the stuff that you're doing." So seem like a really genuine guy. And I'm glad to have you on. Why don't you just give everybody your backstory real quick to start it out?
Yeah, sure thing. So I didn't start off in short-term rentals, as you can imagine. It's a little difficult to just start buying luxury short-term rentals. But I'm a lifelong entrepreneur. My name is Blake Rocha online. I go by Mr. 4 to 8. I got the name Mr. 4 to 8 because I originally started, my first big social media business and business in general was around the stock market and trading stocks. And so I was trading from pre-market at 4 a.m. to after hours closing bell, at 8 p.m. And so I called myself Mr. 4 a.m. to 8 p.m. Now it's more like hopefully Mr. 4 a.m. to 8 a.m. and then I'm done. But yeah, I graduated with my degree in international business from California Lutheran University. Went on and did my master's degree and knocked that out during, finished right when COVID started. And so, yeah, I was in a weird place. I knew that I knew that there was a massive opportunity for me to build something when COVID started because I just I saw it as like a level playing field, right? Like myself being a recent graduate, I previously was selling used cars and was working at a takeout restaurant, got laid off, obviously like everybody else. And was kind of just stuck at home and recognized an opportunity. I wasn't doing anything on social media before, but I always really understood the marketing side of things. I'd started a million businesses. A lot of them were not successful. A lot of just, clothing lines and flipping clothes and Chinese wholesale and e-commerce and you name it, anything I could do to make an extra buck. Right. Started it. What ended up being two of the largest online subscription services, subscription communities around stock and crypto, and just more so trading and investing. Those both went on. One of them went on and did 8 figures. The other one did multiple 7 figures. And over that time, I amassed a following online under this moniker, Mr. 4 to 8, but I never showed my face. So for 2 years, I built up like 1.5 million followers just across TikTok, Instagram, and all that stuff by only, using a picture of Tony Soprano. And, because at the time I thought, who's going to listen to when I started this thing, a 23-year-old, share their thoughts on, business, marketing, stocks, that whole world. So over the course of time, as I was building these businesses, I knew that my end goal was I wanted to buy enough real estate so that I could cover, first just take care of my parents, second take care of myself, and then have this like nest egg of passive income coming in every single month that would make me feel comfortable when I sleep at night if I start another business and it fails or if something goes wrong. And so that's kind of how the short-term rental thing started. I started buying single family properties, started with Section 8 properties out in North Carolina. Didn't like the way that those were going down. I still own them, but there wasn't enough cash flow for me. The turnover was high. The people were breaking stuff all the time, and it was just a nightmare. So once I recognized the opportunity in short-term rentals, I began buying short-term rentals. And today, my Airbnb portfolio is worth a little over $17 million. Obviously, that's not all equity, but that's the portfolio size, and it does about $2.2 million in revenue a year, about $80,000 a month in profit.
That's awesome, man. Sounds like you basically like rode the kind of meme stock, like Robinhood. There was like that time period where all that stuff was like up and to the right. Crypto was going up. all these things were going up, and there was so much like online social media buzz around it. And you're like, all right, how do I'm a young guy, understand media, understand marketing. How do I tap into this? And then like, how do I create businesses out of it? And I think that there's a lot of mystique around how to, grow a following and what to do. And people like knock on, whatever you want to call it, a social media influencer. But the reality is like a lot of these people make businesses out of it, whether it's like selling classes or whatever it may be, creating an online subscription thing. But like essentially like as a young person seeing the trend, like you read the trends and you're like, how do I figure out how to monetize this? Right. I mean, you basically just saw what was happening and dove in and monetized.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the biggest turning point for me was I was interested in stocks, but I wasn't the greatest stock trader in the world. But what I did see was, I was living in a apartment. It was like five or six of us, bunch of surfers that had no business in ever like trading away their money for for stocks, and they're all asking me, hey, what do we buy? What penny stock should we look at? And that's when I recognized the opportunity of, hey, maybe I'm not the best trader in the world, but I am semi-educated on the topic. I am relatable to a younger crowd. There is this massive opportunity of people that are wanting to learn about trading. So why don't I build a platform where I can connect people that are smarter than me at trading with people that want to learn about trading and arbitrage and take that money somewhere in the middle. And so that's kind of how that happened. Yeah.
That's interesting. So it was basically like from that is like what you use to like get the equity that you had to get into real estate. You're basically like, I created this. It's not super passive. I mean, social media in general, it's like it's pretty. You have to be pretty on, right? Like you have to be putting out content or creating content. It's high touch. Like as much as people want to romanticize like the content game, like it's a lot of work, quite frankly. And so you basically made some profits on that, and then you started rolling that into real estate. Is that how you kind of got your seed money?
Yeah, so I've only ever I haven't partnered with anybody on anything. I have about 30% equity across my portfolio. The most difficult thing was, when I started investing, interest rates were like at 3%, and because I didn't have 2 years um, you know of tax records to show that I could, I was making the income that I was making, I had to go use these like really high interest at the time, high interest rate loans, like 5.5% when everyone was at 3%. But now I'm looking back, like, yeah, the 5.5% is not too bad.
Yeah,
But
that's
it
good.
is. But it was a continued trend for that. That year or two where I was scaling my real estate portfolio, and really the real estate thing too. It is a passion of mine, and so I've got some. I really do enjoy like the experiences I've been able to to create for people. One thing that's really awesome that I've done. Not saying in like a braggy way, but like a lot of people told me not to work with family. My mom worked at Costco for 35 years. She woke up at 3:30 a.m., 4 a.m. every single morning, and she did the numbers. Like she's when you talk about numbers, she's so freaking smart. It's insane. And then my dad on the other side of things worked in the prison system and is just a great leader. He's great with his hands. He knows what he's doing in terms of projects and stuff. And so, I went to them and said, hey, look, you guys got, we got two options now because we're a close family. Everyone's telling me not to work with you guys. I can either retire you guys both, from your jobs right now, like we're good, houses, cars, whatever, it's taken care of, or I can, you guys can retire from your jobs and then come work for me and let's build like a family business. And so I'm low touch on my Airbnb stuff besides acquisitions. I'm pretty much all acquisitions. My mom runs the property management side of things now. We self manage everything except for one house that's in the Smoky Mountains. And that's only because it was in the underwriting of the deal that the property manager would stay. And then my dad does project management, flies around anytime, we have problems going on or stuff that needs to be handled in terms of larger projects. He goes out and handles that. So I'm like 15, 20 minutes a week on, managing my business, which I think everybody should try and aspire to get to in whatever business that they're doing.
So it's really interesting. You're jumping ahead to I was going to ask you some of these questions around the administrative side because with our short-term rentals company, it's a bit of a bear administratively. We've got one of the partners that does it pretty much full time as his job, and we have a property management company that we work with on everything. We've also just like concentrated in one market because we know it and it's in our backyard and we can get there pretty quickly.
And
And
that's
we have
the
a
broken bow market, correct?
yeah, it's the Broken Bow market, right? So it's in Oklahoma, but it's like really a Dallas market. And we just have this, there's like a great property management company that we've kind of grown with them. Like they were sort of newer. And so because we have the scale with them, we get good service and we get a good rate. But yeah, I was just wondering like how you how you handle all that back office and administrative stuff. And you kind of answered the question, like you guys do self manage. I mean, that's a lot of work, dude. Just the guest relations side of it, the bookings. I mean, the problems that come up, people calling like, "Hey, this thing, the hot tub doesn't work," and it's like
Right.
10 p.m. on a Friday. So basically, your mom's like handling all that,
She's a beast, dude. But there's two different ways to look at it though. So like I'm more in the luxury space, right? So
right?
we tried going down the route of getting a virtual assistant here, a virtual assistant there. The problem is, as you know as well as I do, when people are paying $1,000 a night, $2,000 a night, $3,000 a night for a property, 10,000 for the week, 20,000 for the week. If anything goes wrong, it is a nightmare. It's a headache. It's the end of the world. And so you have to have, again, like you said, I concentrate in different markets, and so like I'm really concentrated in, um, you know, the Destin, Miramar, Panama City Beach area, and then also the Smoky Mountains. And I just built out amazing teams there with like we have the best two or three cleaners around. We have the
Right.
best two or three handymen. Our real estate agent we became great friends with, and so she's got a brother who's got a cousin who's got a this and a that. So anytime shit goes wrong, and you don't know what you don't know for the first couple of months, but you start to figure out the kinks with all these different houses. And I do think that one of the best strategies is rather than just spreading out and having a house in every single city, from an administrative standpoint, having a couple of central locations where you can build out teams and operations. Everything's going to run a lot smoother. And I think that you can actually, with smaller properties, like I have a lot of students that they do start smaller with apartments, condos, and things like that. You'll notice a lot less headaches going on there. People know what to expect. It's almost as if they're staying in a hotel room. So they're not
Right.
complaining a whole bunch. And so you can use virtual assistants to manage those.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's good because that was another one of the questions you're kind of answering before I say them. But it's like, how do you manage across the different geographic areas? It sounds like there is some concentration. It's not like one house in every single different market. It's like, hey, we got some over here. We kind of know who the ops people, who the cleaning people are.
Yep.
Maybe we've got some over there. What did you go for when you went to buy the first one? Like, was it when you did you like look at a bunch of different markets? Did you kind of just see a property that you liked? But walk me through that process of making the leap into like the very first one.
Yeah. So the first property that I bought was in, again, in that Destin, Florida area. And, at the time, this is mid 2021 or like mid late 2021. I, I'd spent the previous year pretty much studying as much as I could about Airbnb, paying the top mentors and top coaches, doing everything I could to learn about deciding which markets I wanted to be in because I knew that I wanted to concentrate. And I knew that there's just so much out there. Everyone's going to tell you that one city is better than the other. Everybody at the time, too, had all these different ideas about what the future of Airbnbs were going to look like because what happened with, the Airbnb stuff, what we saw was during COVID when everything shut down, it did was, it limited the traveling for that certain amount of time. But once traveling opened back up, there was not enough supply to keep up with the demand. So the price, just basic economics, prices, basically doubled for average nightly rates. So then once things started coming back to earth and some of these big places got exposed, I was looking at Scottsdale a lot, man. Like I really was like, man, it's close, it's flying distance. Let's do Scottsdale. But everything I was looking at was going $300,000-$400,000 over asking price, all cash. And I just was like, man, this is a boom and bust market. Phoenix, Las Vegas, like we saw it happen in '08. So let's go somewhere different. And so I created a thesis, and I think that this is what most people should do when they're getting into any sort of investment, whether it be stocks, crypto, real estate, whatever it is. Create a thesis that you can follow. And so for me, I wanted to invest in places that I knew that people were going to go to and have been going to for generation after generation. And I didn't want to go to places that were trendy now, and the same people that are visiting this year are probably going to go to Europe this and spend their whole summer in Europe next year, right? So for me, I started doing research. I kind of start checking out these places. The Smoky Mountain National Park, finding out about that is the second most visited national park in the United States. I think it's like 14 or 17 million people go every single year. Sure, there could be a oversaturation of houses, but my goal was to build the best experiences, have the best photos, the best houses. And so if you have that in any market, you can stand out and become a champion. And so that's what I did in this Destin market. I really, started to study and get to learn and start talking to a lot of different real estate agents to really understand what is this market all about? Who visits here? Why do they visit? And how often are they coming? And what are the seasons and stuff? So I narrowed down those two markets when everybody was really telling me not to go there because of oversaturation. And right now, a lot of friends that are struggling in the short-term rental market are coming to me asking the same questions like, hey man, are you seeing a slowdown? I'm having my biggest year ever right now, and I expect to have an even larger year next year. So we'll see. I hope that my thesis, plays out correctly, but so far, so good.
Yeah, that's good. Talk about the. I agree with a lot of what you said, and I think it's smart the way you're looking at it. Talk about like the way to get intel on a market. I mean, you mentioned real estate agents. That's one thing we've gotten really close with is the different top agents in a market. We talk to the property management companies, even though we don't use all of them, but we like try to stay tight with them. And we've used a couple different ones. We're now just with one, but I feel like those people are like a great resource, right? And that's people always will message me and like, hey, like, I thought about buying this little cabin or whatever. It's in this market. It's really not that established. And I'm like, dude, go talk to property management companies. I mean, number one, you got to manage it. And then I was like, and
Right.
talk to real estate agents. I mean, is that kind of like your view is like get the intel from the people that are the experts in that place?
It's a little tricky because my answer may be a little jaded because this is now my world, and because I, run a high ticket coaching program now with thousands of students. I'm like so immersed in every market, from Canada down to Mexico now that it's gotten a little convoluted, and so all my I just have a lot of data to show like where things are going and what I think about different markets. I say for the average person, the best place that you can start is using a tool like an airdna.co, or a Rabu, right? Any of these sites where you can kind of look at a city's statistics, understand what the general occupancy is, what the average nightly rates are, see how many properties are in the area. I'd say for most people, a great rule of thumb to use is you want an average occupancy in a city to be above 70%. You'd like the average nightly rate to be above $150 and at least 250 active listings, unless you know that that market is just like a little subsect city right outside of a major city or a bigger market. But those are some good guidelines that people can follow to figure out a good market to invest in.
Do you think you have to be careful when you talk to the local people because they can maybe try to sell you on it, right? It's like some real estate agent, she's just trying to tell you what you want to hear, or some property management company just trying to tell you what you want to hear because they make money if you transact.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that one thing that you can do to kind of get a third, one thing that I've done at least was when I was trying to figure out where to invest, I started using everybody may not have this tool, but I started using my audience to ask people questions about, hey, where do you guys travel? Hey, I say, hey, I'm from California. Haven't spent too much time in the South. Haven't spent too much time in the East. Where do you guys love to travel for camping? Where's the go-to spots? And then everybody goes, oh, we love the Smokies. I didn't even know what the Smokies were. Oh, we
Yeah.
love going to Destin. That beach, we go every single year. And now, come to find out, these families will literally get 4 or 5 families together, run up every single credit card they can, because there is no doubt that they're gonna be uh, not missing their trip, to wherever they're going this year.
Right. What about property selection? Like when you look at a property, you mentioned having the best ones or, creating an experience. Like what's kind of the screening process? Is it just how cool it is, or are you focused on things like sleep count, number of bedrooms, number of bathrooms? I mean, just run me through like amenities. Like where's your head at when you're looking at acquiring a
Sure.
property?
So every market's different, right? So one thing that I learned, you really have to learn the markets, and you learn that by studying the statistics. I think that the numbers don't lie. So what we saw with the Smoky Mountains is you have two different options. You go this like unique type of like A-frame, or cabins that sleep 2 to 4 people, right? So like a smaller, more romantic type of vibe. Or you're going big, large, and packing as many people in as you can, make sure that you have a pool, and you start to see like there's some must-have amenities that are gonna make your listing be something that people would even want to stay at. And so I think that identifying when you decide the market that you want to be in, I always encourage people. I invest out of state, but a great place to start is within an hour and a half, 2 hours of you, just so that you can have some people feel a lot safer having more control on things. I'm a little bit more of a loose cannon. I'm more like fire ready aim. So I kind of invested wherever, but I think that determining what the necessary amenities are in your area, and then when I've been buying properties and stuff, at the time when I was first doing it, first getting into it, a lot of it was newer to me, and I knew that I didn't have I was spread thin. I didn't have the operations in place. I'd never really ran Airbnbs before, and I didn't have the time to be flying back and forth to Florida or Tennessee or North Carolina to figure out, hey, let's do this, hey, let's do that, let's add this here. I didn't know. So I was buying turnkey. Now I'm in a position where I'm buying value add only, pretty much value add, and I really like the concept of buying multifamily in unique locations, because we're seeing that, like, I bought two duplexes, so four total units, and those crush it for me, and they're the least headache I've ever had. Like,
Mm,
no headache, crush it. The average daily rate, if you total it up, they've appreciated in value. So I do like those kind of ideas. And then right now I'm expanding. Um, I can't say too much about it yet, but I am under contract, and I'm expanding into the boutique hotel space. So
awesome. Now the value add is huge, and so kind of our background was we bought a place. It did really well. It was turnkey, and it was before prices really ran up. And we just looked at it was really just the revenue, and it was like, hey, we looked at a bunch of different places, and this one had incredible revenue. The asking price was like what we thought was a little high, but ultimately ended up being really cheap because prices ran up. And then the second one, it was like we built it, but it was already the plans were already together, and the builder was like shopping the plans, and I think they'd like cleared the lot and had like maybe the foundation poured and
mhm.
a little bit of the frame or something. So it was like we basically stepped in and kind of helped build that one and like pick out what we wanted, and it was a little bit deceiving because they did a really good job and they got it done really quickly, which always isn't the case with builds, which we can talk about if you want. But yeah, I see like the guys that do the value add. I think that maybe is a good in between because like building from the ground up, I think it's I think it's cost advantage depending on your market. It could not be if it's a market where it costs a ton to build, but for us, it's cost advantage to build. But just wondering, like, have you ever thought of building from the ground up and then to tag on to that question, when you do the value add, how big of a project do you want it to be? Is it something small, like we pop in a pool, or is it like a total gut reno? But just your thoughts around building and then renovations.
Sure. So I'm about 30, a little less than 30 days away from my first new build being complete. It's been about a year, or maybe like a year and 8 month process. Like, it's been pretty long. It's been drawn out. It's everything that they said it was going to be. They promise you a certain date. They promise you a certain price, and shit happens.
Right.
But
Right.
I got the property for a really great price. I knew exactly where I wanted to build, and became friends with the builder and the real estate agent. So yeah, I think that at the right price point, and if you have the ability to have both the patience and the funds to support a project like that, I think new builds are great, because you're buying an asset. Essentially, I'm going to be coming into this thing and picking up, if I were to, refinance, or, in a year or two, probably pick up three or $400,000 in equity just off of, the price that I bought it at. And on top of that, having a very unique new listing where I've been able to kind of make some tweaks. I'm like, hey, look, the neighbor's house looks kind of similar. Let's just do broad, like, huge windows in the back, like, air this son of a bitch out. And let's get, I want lights here and I want lights there. Movie rooms are dead. No more movie rooms. Let's add another bedroom here. We're seeing the sleep count is more important. So I'm able to kind of make these tweaks that I know are going to make me more money on that property. And I don't really even have intentions of selling these properties. My goal is to buy and hold, like, forever, damn near, and maybe at the end, like, do a roll up and sell, depending on how big my portfolio is. But to me, most importantly, is that I'm just cash flowing every single month. Like, that's the one number that matters the most to me. And so these new builds do give you a good amount of cash flow. Now, in terms of value add, I haven't done a gut renovation yet. I wouldn't mind doing one. It just is a big projects to take on require a lot of time, a lot of energy, and preparation. And for me, right now, it's more important to focus on the tasks that make me the most amount of money up front. And the most, like, I have a window right now where I have people's attention on social media, right? So for me to distract myself and say, hey, I'm just doing all these crazy, ridiculous projects with real estate, and, like, my whole life is real estate, when I have thousands and thousands of people that are wanting coaching, and that are wanting to see content every single day, and that are trying to follow me on YouTube and TikTok and all this stuff. that's where a good grip of my business comes in, right? Like that's a huge, massive part of the business. So my attention is more so focused there, and I try and just do projects like adding the putting greens or adding a pool. Or in Florida, one of the things we do with 3-car garages is we cut down the third car and we turn it into a game room. Stuff like that we know is just kind of easy to go add value. It's going to make us more money. And one thing that's interesting too is if we do have to sell any of these short-term rentals, I'm in these markets where people are looking to invest in short-term rentals. So you can, and we've seen it a lot, sell these properties sometimes at a multiple of, or based on how much revenue or profit that the property is making on Airbnb if you have a year or two worth of numbers to show that.
Yeah, for sure you can. And I mean, like the thing you said about building, it's true. I mean, like we building, you can depends on like I said, it depends on the market. Some places to build, like if it's a residential home, like where I live outside of Oklahoma City, new builds are way more expensive than buying an existing house. Like it just is. But like
Right.
in the market that we're in Broken Bow, the retail prices went up so much and they've cooled off a little bit. Like prices have definitely come down on certain types of properties there, but it's still cheaper to build. Now you have to have money in the interim to cover the interest payments on the loan.
Right.
You have to have a bank that will lend to you for a construction loan. And depending on your financial position, not everybody can get that. It might be easier for somebody to get something if it's already cash flowing. But like what we're seeing on these bigger cabins, like you can build them with like significant equity baked in and they'll just appraise for more than you have in it. And so that's a
100%.
really nice place to be, like when it just appraises for more than what you paid. But there's a lot of pain and like, blood, sweat, and tears to build something. I mean, it's not easy. Like you said,
How long
takes
was
a
the
lot of time.
process for your most recent build? Is it Angel's Landing?
Well, Angel's Landing was the first one that we did, and that was the one that we built. And that was the one that was like they'd already kind of started it and it went really quick. It was like 8 or 9 months and they got that thing.
Nice.
But they'd already like cleared the lot and like done
Yeah.
some foundation work. These really big ones, like the Swimming with the Stars and the Poolside Pines one, I mean, they were like almost 18 months. Like it was supposed to be done in like 13 or 14. So it went about 4 or 5 months overdue, which sucks for the summer because we probably lost some
Dude.
good bookings, but like we made some changes in the middle. Like after we bought the properties, we were like, we have to do pools because like less than 1% of the market has pools and the market is getting more saturated and there's more competition. And it's like, we have to build something that's unique. We have to build an experience. Like it can't just be another cabin in the woods. Even if
Right.
it sleeps a lot of people, now there's more cabins that sleep a lot of people, right? So you have to like differentiate yourself. And so adding the pools and then just like little stuff with like subcontractors, it just took time to like just like little things. Like these things were 90% done like 4 or 5 months ago. It was just
Mhm.
the smaller things that added up, like getting somebody to come do this little thing that needed to get done and trying to
Right.
find the right contractor. So, I would say a good rule of thumb in our market is 12 to 15 months. Probably if you're doing like a behemoth, like really big one, it could take a year and a half. Like that's probably on the high end. But but yeah, I mean, you need to be prepared to go at least a year plus during the build process. Typically, if it's a big cabin, if it's a 1 bedroom or something, you could probably get it done in 8 or 9 months.
Are
But
you are you planning on expanding into like so I know a little bit about you. I've listened to the pod and stuff and checked out what you've got going on. This obviously isn't the world that you started in, and but it's growing for you and you've got more and more properties. Are you planning on expanding into different markets and making this more of a bigger gig?
we've talked about doing different markets. Like right now, what we have is we have the portfolio of homes and like a little fund that we raise. Cause like after we exited our first properties, we raised a fund. And then the big thing we're focused on is development now. So we've got this, like in our market, there is no real waterfront properties because there's a big state park and a national forest. And that is all owned by, I mean, obviously you can't build in a national forest and the state park and the lake is owned by the Corps of Engineers. Like you can't build anything on the
Hmm.
water. And so the best that this market had to offer was like pond lots or creek lots, which are,
Hmm.
they're all right. Like some of the ponds are nice. They're big, a couple acre ponds and they have
Right.
fountains and people put docks on them, whatever. But so there's this like incredible river that comes down from the state park, and there's this river, and it's like one of the best trout fishing spots in the lower 48. And we just like there's a few cabins, like there's probably a dozen cabins along the river, but they're like older. They're not real, they're not updated, they're not modern, and they're awesome. Like if you've ever stayed on the river, you're like, man, this is it. Like
Yeah, yeah.
why isn't everything out here? Because this is about the same distance as the stuff that we're building in, which is to the north in like the mountainous area with the
Uh,
views. We're kind of down to the other area. So we worked for a long time to get an off market land deal, and we're doing kind of a ground up development. And that's probably where we're going to be focusing our time for the next, 3 or 4 or 5 years, because it's just a lot of work. But it's cool because we're like trying to create a community, right? And
Oh yeah, yeah,
we're trying to provide something to the market that's totally different. And when people get out there, they're like, "Oh my gosh, like this is a real river. This isn't like just some
badass.
stream. It's like a 300-foot wide river." And so that's kind of what we're thinking. We've talked about other markets. It's just hard to like until we like, if we were to exit out of the properties we have at some point, then we would maybe look at other markets. It's just like our whole thesis has just been, like you said, build a thesis. It's like focus on what you know. Like we know this market,
100%.
we know this market really well. We understand what works. We understand what doesn't. We've been out here. It's driving distance for us. So when things come up, somebody can go out there. We've got a partner that it's his full time job and he works on it, and so he's out there every week. And
Nice.
so that's kind of where we're at, is the development side, and probably we're selling lots now, but we'd probably like to do some spec homes. We may there's another phase of it that we may potentially do an own and operate type thing, where we build, kind of like, I don't know if you've seen like Isaac French's Live Oak Lake, but like
Yep,
maybe we do something like that for part of it, where we build some and then continue to operate them. But where we've leaned to lately is that like we kind of like making money on the transaction side. It's like, yes, operating is good, but if you can build a property, prove it up, and then sell it, you can pull forward 5 or 6 years worth of profit to
totally.
today, right? So that's kind of moving more towards the transactional side, like building out the development, selling lots, potentially selling houses. Sort of where our heads are at.
Dope. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, man, it's cool. It's a lot of work, like everything else in real estate. I think people think it's pretty passive, and it can be, but there's still more work than I feel like people think that there
Yeah,
is.
totally.
Um,
It's easy to make it sound when somebody like Isaac shows pictures of Live Oak Lake, you go, oh, it's yeah, it runs itself. It's like, no, what about the
yeah,
2 years to build the fucking thing, right?
yeah, right. You had to build it, and you had to buy the land and get the
And
utilities put
and
in.
what people from the outside, like, look, they always say the loudest boos come from the cheapest seats, and being somebody who's a young, person that is actually going out and buying real estate, teaching real estate, and all that stuff. Get a million haters and comments, and he doesn't really do that, and it's daddy's money, and it's this and that. But the bottom line is, unless you've ever gone out and bought investment properties, you have no clue. Like, it's scary. You know what I mean? Like, I
Yeah,
still get scared. I got scared on this offer that I made on this hotel. Like, I've never done boutique hotels. Is it like an Airbnb? I have a staff. I'm going to have a staff now. It's across the country. There's all these what ifs and what ifs, what ifs. But I'm a firm believer that if you can get past the analysis paralysis of real estate investing, that this is the route to financial freedom, and it's not always going to be super fast. I think that short term rentals have definitely sped up the process. I think that one of the things that people don't really understand about short term rentals is the amazing tax benefits that we get being a real estate professional and investing in short term rentals, and more specifically value add short term rentals. When I go in and I go build a pool, or when I go in and build a putting green or any of this stuff, and it costs me 80, $90,000, $100,000, that's all a tax deduction. The tax deducted straight from my taxable income, and it just added value to the property, and it's going to appraise for more when I reappraise it, and I'm going to be able to charge more per night. So there's all these little boxes you start checking where you're like, okay, shit, this is what it's all about. The game is about making your money work for you, right? And a lot, and I think that in this age that we're in right now, people are waking up to that. Like, God damn, like my mom the other day. It's a great example. Her whole life she's traded time for money, right? I clock in at this hour, I make this per hour, and so life, whenever we go spend $100, it costs 4 hours of my time, or 5 hours of my
right.
time. So I get stuck in it. I'm flying back from, I don't even remember. I think I was in Tennessee, land in Tennessee. We're supposed to land in Houston, and then Houston to LA. Well, we go over Houston. There's some weird storm going on, so they park us in Dallas. And I had two options: stay on the plane basically, or in that airport area for like 8 hours, and then maybe get another plane, or go back to Houston, maybe get another plane, or pay another 350 or $400, hop on a plane in the next 40 minutes and get back to LA. And of course, I bought the plane ticket, and my mom does my bookkeeping, which is funny, but so she's always on my ass about random stuff. But she texts me, "What the hell? $400 for a plane? We already got this plane for 350." I go, Mom, listen, what am I making any of that? What is any of this money for then? If it isn't to buy back time, then literally what is it for? And so that's my goal, is to kind of just show people it's not, whether it's real estate, e-commerce, your 9 to 5, whatever you're doing, the goal needs to be buy back that time, and then so you have time to do whatever the hell it is that you want to do, right? I mean, that's
Right.
just my thoughts.
Oh, time is huge, man. And like sometimes I will question because I have a lot going on. We got the real estate stuff, which isn't a full time thing for me, but I spend a meaningful amount of at least thoughts on it. I mean, a couple of the other partners probably spend a lot more of their actual time, but I do spend time on it. I spend a lot of thought on it. I've got our other businesses that we do, and I also have 3 little kids, and so sometimes I'm like, is it worth like starting another business or doing another thing if it's going to like eat up more of my mental headspace and like the time that I have during the day? So I think that that's something somebody that's like entrepreneurial or addicted to like the building something or having the success. It's like at some point I think there's a crossover where you start to value the time a little more. I mean, obviously if you're just trying to make ends meet, it's different because you've got
100%.
you're working on that. But I think people have to be realistic around what they're pursuing, whether it's real estate or whatever, and just like what are the trade-offs? Like, is it stress? Is it money? Is it time? But that's huge. What do you think about like as you do the coaching stuff and the classes for people around a good rule of thumb for the type of nest egg they need to have? I mean, 'cause obviously it takes money to invest in real estate. You have to put money in. There is risk. There's debt. But just like, is it for everybody, or do people need to be in kind of like a certain financial situation to where they've got at least some kind of nest egg or security to be able to kind of make it work? Because people ask me all the time, and I'm like, you know what? Unless you've got enough money to pay the mortgage for X
Right.
amount of months, you probably shouldn't do it. Like if you're waiting on like if someone cancels a reservation and you can't make ends meet, then like it's probably not the thing for you. I mean, do you kind of agree with that, or what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, so there's a couple different thoughts there. Most most important to understand is that there's a couple different ways that you can invest in short-term rentals without having to go buy a property. So yes, I do suggest, in order to buy a property, honestly, I tell people, unless, which very few people are gonna go out there and use an FHA loan and go house hack. Like that's one way that you could go buy a $600,000 triplex or a duplex in Oklahoma City or wherever, live in one side and rent out the others on Airbnb. That's one way to
Right.
do it, right? Other than that, I recommend, if you're going to buy a property, at least have $40,000-$50,000 saved up. That's enough to have you go buy a $250,000 property. Put 10% down, if you can find a 10% down loan. Go put another 20,000-25,000 into furnishings, and that's probably a good spot to be in. My ex girlfriend, we did that in Memphis with her on her first property, and it worked out just fine. She makes about $2,200 a month in profit from that. Other than that, if you have no money and you're just getting started, you're 22 years old, you're getting out of college, and you're like, "Fuck, dude, I got no money, dude. In fact, I got $30,000 of student loan debt, so I got negative money." You can start with co-hosting, and yes, is it difficult to find people to co-host with? Absolutely. You're gonna have to build trust with people. You're gonna have to potentially use your network. But if you do have friends and family, or people that that are wealthy, that have multiple properties, and they're not using them, come up with learn the game first, understand what you're going to be pitching, create a professional pitch, and approach them about, hey, look, here's a great opportunity. You guys have this property that sits on the beach in Wilmington, North Carolina. You guys go to it 2 times a year. I know you don't want to rent it out, but let me pitch it to you like this. I will manage it and run everything for you. I will manage all the listings. I will literally make this a headache-free thing for you, where you're making, I guarantee, anywhere between $3,000 to $5,000 a month in profit, and I'll just take 20%. How does that sound? And so
Yeah.
that is a risk-free way for you to start in Airbnb investing, short-term rental investing, because it's not your property. If it doesn't rent out, whatever, it wasn't renting out before anyways, and that's one way to start. The other way is, oh, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say that's good. I mean, I think especially like you were saying within your network and friends and family and people that I think it would be hard to co-host with a random person. I know people try to do it. I've seen people post on Twitter that they get approached by like a random company that's like, "Let us
Right.
co-host your thing," and that's probably a tough sell. Nor do I know like it would be
Yeah.
tough for me if I owned a property to let someone random do it. But like, yeah, I mean, if you have somebody that has a property like a lake house or something, and you're like, "Hey, could we try to short-term rental this?" I mean, that seems like a pretty good way to get your feet wet. I mean, really, like for me, it was when I started buying real estate, it was just single family homes because I was like,
Right.
well, I've owned a home, I've bought a home, I know what goes wrong with them, I know how much it costs to replace a water heater. It was like, let's just start with something that I know. And then when we bought the first Airbnb, it was like, well, this has, 100K of bookings for the rest of the year. Like, even if these cancel, like it's had success. So we got into something like we try to get into things and phase our way into it, not just like
Yeah.
dive in.
Totally. The other way that I teach, and tons and tons of my students do this, this is one of the most popular things that people reach out about, is rental arbitrage model, where we're renting properties on signing a long-term lease, getting a written and legal agreement from the landlord to sublease their property on Airbnb or short-term rental websites. And so just quick math off the top of the head, if you rent a property for $2,000 a month in St. Louis, Missouri, and then you go charge $250 a night times 20 nights, you're making $4,500. I think that's the right math or something like that. But whatever it is, you make, let's call it $4,000, $4,500, add in your expenses, you could be walking away with $1,800, $2,000 a month in profit on a property that you don't even own. It's 100% legal. And you can start with about $10,000 in cash, or, if you can start to utilize business credit. Most important thing for a lot of this stuff, guys, is, for anybody that's listening, that's wanting to get started, I see so many people get screwed up on the credit side of things. Pay attention to your credit now. Like, you need a good credit score to go buy a property, or you're gonna have a cosigner. Like, don't just wait until the time comes where you're ready to rock and roll, and then somebody goes, "Hey, you're not ready to go. Like, you can't even pay your credit cards. The last however many months. Why would we ever
Right.
give you money to buy a property or do anything like that?"
Right. For sure. No, that's good. I mean, I think like, there's lots of things to do, but I'm a little bit more conservative. So I always just try to err on the side of being conservative. Let me ask you this. Like, so because you self manage, do you do any direct bookings, or is everything basically VRBO and Airbnb?
So I'm actually that's funny you asked that. We're in the process. We've been about a week and a half into building our direct booking website. I think I'm at the point now with enough properties that it makes sense, and we're getting enough returned customers where it makes sense. But when I was first starting, I didn't really see a need to go out there and spend money to build a direct uh, a legitimate private booking website. But now, yeah, I think that's where things are trending. I think that if you can utilize certain softwares and hardwares to be able to collect people's information, set up an email drip campaign, collect their cell phone numbers, and be able to retarget and remarket these people year after year, you're going to be able to eat away that, whatever it is, 20% that you kind of lose to Airbnb fees and bullshit fees that they take.
How has it been dealing with Airbnb? Do you use Verbo? I guess always say VRBO, but
Yeah.
Verbo. And do you use both of them, or do you just use Airbnb, or which one do you use?
I use both, and actually, VRBO does better for us in that market. Which, out here in California, people all they say is Airbnb. It's almost like a verb. It's like, oh, Google it. Oh, let's Airbnb it.
Right.
There, it's different. They all use Verbo, and the people that visit there and travel there a lot of times use Verbo. So yeah, I'm on both platforms, and then I use Guesty to property manages, or like a PMS. But we're gonna be switching away from that. Guesty's been nothing but headaches. All my properties that sleep above 25 people, they ever since I connected them with Guesty, they don't pop up on the first and second page anymore. They're nowhere to be found. So it's been a shit show kind of working with them. I'm gonna try HostAway next. It's just how it is, integrating everything and softwares and all this stuff. It's freaking headaches. So
Yeah. What about like any stories about like you read all these stories about Airbnb and canceling, and like guests wanting, after the fact, like trying to claim, whatever they want a refund, or just any horror stories you've had to deal with, regardless of whether it's Airbnb or just in general, just some stories.
we've had shit catch on fire. I had a kid drive one of our golf carts that was like 10 years old and crash into a brand new Escalade.
Oh,
And then they didn't say anything. And then I get a call from the cops like a week later, like just stuff like that. Look, the bottom line is this: what people don't understand, and I got two great stories after this, but what people need to understand before I kind of tell these stories is there's a difference between buying long-term real estate and just having a property manager and sitting back and collecting your $200-300 a month versus running a short-term rental business, which is a legitimate service business. We're in the service industry. So yes, there you got to kind of take in these I call them like rounding errors. There's always going to be shit that goes wrong. There's going to be somebody complaining about something that broke. There's people that you're going to have to replace bed sheets and stuff. My rule of thumb is anything that's like under $1,000, I don't even hassle with, because to me, the most important thing is getting my 5-star ratings and remaining a top listing versus dicking around back and forth with these people about little ticky tacky shit. Now, if there's a massive, like, it looked like somebody threw a rock through my like couple $1,000 um, uh, oven, like a huge Viking oven. Looks like
Right.
somebody threw a rock, and they're like, "Oh, sorry, it was your guys' floors were wet. Our buddy slipped and hit his elbow." I'm like, "Dude, bullshit. You guys were partying
Yeah.
there. Obviously, something's wrong." But it is what it is. So now, two little quick stories. On my one of my flagship properties in Florida, there's this creepy security guard guy that just, God, he just gave me the heebie-jeebies when we drive through. And I kept thinking, this motherfucker's gonna do something weird one of these days. Well, we get a message and a picture of this. There's a bunch of little girls, like there's young girls and parents, but all the little girls are swimming at night because the pools are heated. And this dude's standing on the like electric box outside of the wall around my house and looking down at these kids swimming. And they got a picture of it. And I got the guy fired. I'm like, this is fucking disgusting. Like, this is
Yeah. That's
weird,
creepy, man.
creepy. That was a creepy story. The worst story in terms of like the money that I've lost, and like this would be an unrecoverable type of event if I didn't have such high cash flowing other businesses to just kind of eat the costs. I bought a property for what was a very good price, with a pool on the roof, and it it I was nervous about it, but it went past inspections and everything seemed to be gravy. I bought this house sight unseen. It was a multi-million dollar property. I kind of just, it was the end of the year, December 31st closing. Just, I needed to check it in just so I could, get the tax write-offs and stuff. That house, we worked on it now for coming up very close to just about 2 years, where it's been vacant because we had not been able to fix this leaking freaking pool. It was leaking
Oh,
nonstop, ruining the house. And my mortgage on that place was $10,000 just to keep the lights on every single month, right? So I'm at 200,000 into this house, maybe another 60 or $70,000 into just trying to fix the pool a bunch of times, and another $30,000. My dad was just out there for a month and a half. Completely, they covered the pool. It is now just a deck on top of the roof, and who would have
yeah.
thought? But so if I didn't have that cash, I would have been screwed, and it just would have been a nightmare. Luckily, I had that. Now it's finally up and renting. And in 1 year, we'll make back all that profit, which is great because it's a big house. But man, or we'll make back all those expenses with the profits. But yeah, that's a true horror story, man. Like I couldn't have planned for that to go wrong. And lesson learned: I'll never buy a house with a pool on the roof again.
I'm glad you told one of the horror stories because it seems like a lot of times people don't want to tell the L's. They just want to tell the
Right, right,
W's. But that's a good one, man. It's crazy. We've had a lot of stuff. I mean, one of the biggest, probably the biggest losses that we've had are like, it hasn't been recently. It was when we first started, but like people just disputing, like just claiming, going to their credit card company and being like, this was fraud, or people like
right.
using a credit card that they stole or that wasn't theirs, and booking it. And at the time, I think we had two times that happened, and it was like our property management company that we were using. It was an old one, and they're like, "We have this happen. We're gonna have to go after him. We're gonna have to sue him, and we'll try to get a lien on him. And then one day, maybe you guys will get the money back." And I still haven't heard anything. But I guess
Yeah,
if they ever try to sell property or something, then But that's like one that we've had. We've had stuff, obviously broken. The first property we bought, we where it was doing really well cash flow wise, and we hadn't really spent much time there because we don't go to stay at them a lot because they do well, and it's like hard to
yeah,
go during the summers and things like that because you're like, well, this is making money, so we're not going to
right.
go. But it was like in the off season, and we took all of our families up and went, and we walk in, and people had just been like straight smoking cigarettes like in this property, and like every single
Classic.
room just like smelled like cigs, dude. And it was so bad that and we called our property management company. We're like, what's going on? Like, why didn't this get, like, oh,
How's
we
a
have a,
cleaner not said a single thing about this
yeah,
before?
it's like, well, we have $100 fee. We're like $100, like you can't get this smell out. Like it
Yeah.
needs to be $1,000 fee or something. But yeah, when we went home after that, like all the kids smelled like smoke, their clothes. It was just a
Jeez,
nightmare.
dude.
And so it's not what you want. So you're gonna have stuff like that. You're gonna have people breaking stuff. It's
It
just
should
that,
never be enough to keep people on the sidelines, though, and that's what I tell people. They're like, "Well, what about regulations? What about somebody burning your house?" Like, look, get insurance. You're backed by Air Cover, $3 million insurance policy. Um, you know, this is the highest cash flowing asset in this asset class, right? Like short term rentals really do make on the like eight times more than my Section 8 properties, which make more than long term rentals. You know what I mean? So
Right. Yeah, I mean, like, that was our thing was that we looked at the single family home portfolio that I had, and I was like, "Do I wanna charge somebody $1,200 a month, or do I wanna charge somebody $1,200 a night?" You
right,
know, and so you start to doing the math, and obviously, the $1,200 a night property is more expensive, but it's like managing a property is managing a property. It's like you got a
yeah,
house here, you got a house here. They're both, stuff goes wrong, you have issues. Even long-term renters, they call you when stuff goes wrong,
oh
or they
yeah,
call your property management company, and you're still gonna have to deal with stuff that comes up, and it's pretty much every month. Like, maybe you'll go a couple months on a long-term rental where things don't come up, but, like, stuff comes up.
totally.
People don't pay their rent, things just happen, and so it's like, how do we want to manage that? What do you think about just like the future of the short term rental game? You see a lot of doom and gloom people on Twitter. Even in our market, we've seen it get more saturated. It's getting more competitive. It seems like there are a lot of amateurs getting in. Do you see it getting more sophisticated? Do you see it getting more competitive? Just where do you think it's going into the future?
There is a lot of doom and gloom. There's a lot of crazy shit that gets said. I mean, I think that Brian Chesky, the CEO of Airbnb, came out not too long ago saying that they need another million Airbnb hosts to keep up with the demand that they're forecasting with. So I don't think that short-term rentals are going anywhere. I think that people have been traveling and will travel for work and vacation for the rest of time, whether it's through Airbnb, VRBO, whatever comes next, who knows? But I'm putting my money where my mouth is with this, potentially I'm still under contract, but with this boutique hotel, it's a few hours outside of New York City, in the Catskills area, and that's kind of this new thesis that I have is that yeah, continue to invest in these markets that I know are going to be cash cows and are going to be very consistent, like my Smokies and like my Florida properties. Those properties though they have to stick out. That you can't be average. If you're average with average pictures and average mom and pop, just being running it and shitty pricing, and you're not using a price lab, you're using Airbnb's shitty pricing tools, like you're gonna get smoked. You're gonna get swept. This is no joke. Like this is a legitimate, business and a real game that you need to be doing your market research on. You need to be on top of your game. You need to have the best pictures. You need to spend a little bit of money to make a lot more money and really have yourself stick out. Now, I think that a lot of how do I say this in I'm not trying to take any shots here, but I see what a lot of people are doing are, these themed houses. I don't think themes are going to last. I think that that's kind of going to be a trend that comes and goes. Good thing about a themed house is you can paint the walls white and throw some wallpaper on it and, change it up. It's not the end of the world. But where I see things trending are, especially if we are going into this economic recession that everybody's been, warning us about, which I still see the same people going out and eating and drinking and spending money like it's no tomorrow. Um, I think that people will probably be not flying across the country as much and more so going, a couple hours outside of their area to just have some escapes. And so for me, I really do enjoy the idea with both my Airbnbs and this concept of moving into kind of like what Live Oak Lake is, or having boutique hotels, but having it be an all encompassing experience so that people, come back to you via direct bookings. They rave about you online. They talk about how, amazing the services were. That's what it's about: providing an amazing service, having a great experience for people, going the extra mile on certain things, giving them wine and cookies and whatever. But if they're coming for a birthday party, have balloons there already. Like going that little bit of extra mile is what's going to separate you from the rest of the pack over the course of the next 3 to 5 years.
Couldn't agree more. I think it is, in my opinion, or at least in our market, it's getting more competitive. 3 or 4 years ago, you could just have a place and it would probably rent because there was an undersupply of places. I think now there's probably enough. There's definitely enough supply. There may be more than enough supply in our area, and I think that people were assuming that if you didn't have the top amenities, like that's why we decided like pools. We have pools on everything except for two of our smallest properties, and the two of the one bedrooms, and those are more for couples anyways. They're pet friendly. They like to bring their pets. We're putting in dog runs and stuff to accommodate that because it's usually like a couple with their dog or whatever. But for anything with two bedrooms or more, we looked at the market and we were like, there's 1% of places that have a pool, so
Mm,
less than 1%. So we were like, we have to have pools and everything. And so that was part of the reason why construction took longer. It was part of the
Right.
reason, we just decided it. And on the two properties that we just brought on, the two big ones, they've just been record shattering just on the initial. We got them on late.
Awesome.
And usually the big properties, like you want to get them on early for the summer because
Right.
people
Right.
want to book them with big groups. But we've had huge bookings on those in the first couple weeks. It's been crazy.
You did
And
something like
so
$36,000 like your first week or something like that, right?
yeah, it's been really good, like, on that first big one, and then this last big one, like, in the first 24 hours, it was, like, 25K or something, so
Sick.
they've been really good, and we're hopeful that, that will continue. We got one other big one we're bringing online, and then some 2 bedrooms that all have pools, and so that's just kind of our thought is that, like, in a market, it's kind of an arms race. People are getting more sophisticated. You have to kinda look like, what's the next trend? Like, if people already have pools, then, like, what's the next thing? Is it indoor pools? Like,
Right.
is there seasonality? Like, what can you do to combat that? Like, um, and then we're also really focused on cost basis, and that's why we built everything is because we saw what retail was getting paid for these properties, and it was like, I'm not getting in a bidding war. Like, we saw
No.
a really good cabin that we liked, and we were like, we love this cabin. It was incredible. And we bid on it, and we bid market price, and it got bid up like in this bidding war. And we're like, no, we're not doing a
Yeah.
bidding
Yeah.
war. And so we took that exact floor plan for the most part, which is that first big one, Poolside Pines. We tweaked it
Uh-huh.
a little bit, and we just went and built it for like 30% cheaper, and we put a pool in.
Classic.
And so it's
You're
like,
gonna make more
hey,
money
like,
doing that.
yeah, and it
Yeah.
took us longer to get it done, but it was like, I'm not going to pay, retail. It was even cheaper than what they had it listed for, not even what they got bid up to. So it's like that you have to have an advantage. I think you have to
Yeah.
have an edge is kind of our thing. It's like if you got to have a way to differentiate. So I don't know, man.
100%.
This has been good. I got to run here, but this has been very, very good. I know a lot of people are interested in short term rentals. Where's the best place for people to find you and check out your stuff?
Sure. Yeah. Best place to find me on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, anywhere is at Mr. 4 to 8, MrFourGht. Drop me a DM. Tell me that you found me from Max's pod. And yeah, let's talk about short term rentals. I'm happy to help anybody out.
All right, Blake. Thanks for coming on, man. Appreciate
Thanks.
it.